The Chinese Communist Party has infiltrated American media news networks. This is unbelievable. You're not going to want to miss this one. Greetings, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. If you are a new or recurring viewer, I'd like to ask you to please like and share this video. Help it go viral. Help it reach as many people as possible. If you like what I'm doing, please hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of any future updates or videos. And I've got a couple articles coming to you today. This one from the Heritage Foundation. Western media falls into China's propaganda trap. And I'd like to give credit to the original journalist, Hel C. Dale. She is a senior fellow for public diplomacy. And she's got a few key takeaways here. Number one of which, even in the time of national crisis, sheer hatred for the president causes many in the mainstream media to interpret his every action and statement as unacceptable. Two, on top of that, Beijing for years has been constructing the grid for information warfare against the United States, which it is now deploying full force. This combination has produced a shameful capitulation by the media establishment to China's communist authoritarian regime. Beijing for years has been constructing the grid for information warfare against the United States, she says. And there is a shameful capitulation by the media establishment to China's communist authoritarian regime. This has been reflected in decisions by news outlets such as CNN, NBC, CBS, and ABC to cut away from Donald Trump's daily crown illness briefings at the White House. Day after day, media pundits blast and malign Trump. Meanwhile, networks carry the daily briefings by New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, a liberal Democrat, as if only the news from New York counts. Not only that, but according to the Media Research Center, the same news media that continuously piles on Trump fails almost entirely to shine a critical light on the actions of the Chinese government. In a damning report looking at evening news broadcasts from January 17th, when the crown illness story first broke, through March 13th, when the president declared a national state of emergency, the Media Research Center found that out of 634 minutes of the crown illness coverage, just 3 minutes and 14 seconds were in any way critical of the Chinese government's actions. In 20% of those stories, reporters cited Chinese statistics, but failed to challenge them most of the time, a whopping 97% of the time. Over the past decade, Beijing has invested heavily in extending its propaganda reach across the globe, which is now paying off. In some cases, the arrangement goes even further. According to an investigation by the Daily Caller, the Daily Mail newspaper in London has had a content-sharing relationship since 2015 with China's People's Daily, the official organ of the Chinese Communist Party. The Daily Mail thus can be found to echo the Communist Party line on the crown illness, which originated in China. Last week, as of the date of this article, which will be linked in the description below, the Mail ran a story about a second outbreak in China saying, quote, Beijing's leading doctor warns of a new MK1 crown illness outbreak in China after the country reported its first case of someone catching the illness from a person returning from abroad. This story got 1.1 million shares on social media. Countries singled out by it are the United States, Italy, and the United Kingdom. The storyline is that the United States, not China, is responsible for the crown illness, which emerged in March as a propaganda tactic by Beijing. On March 13th, People's Daily published a story based on the statements made by Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian, I know I butchered that, so forgive me, alleging that a visit by U.S. military athletes to Wuhan in October spread the COVID in China. It might be the U.S. Army who brought the epidemic to Wuhan, Zhao said on Twitter. U.S. is the creator of human rights disasters, reads a March 23rd article on the People's Daily website. This line attempts to deflect blame while undermining China's primary international competitor, the United States. What is much harder to comprehend is the readiness of the mainstream media to give a pass to Beijing, all the while showing irrational disdain for the heroic efforts of America's president and his administration. And that is it for this article, and once again, there will be a link in the description. So I'm going to bounce over to this one from The Federalist, which breaks down a rundown of major U.S. corporate media business ties to China. And again, I'm going to skip the main body of this article, and I'm just going to point out the individual news networks. There will be a link for this in the description as well. Original credit goes to Chrissy Clark. This was published May 4th, 2020. And here we got the New York Times. And it says here, in 2009, Slim loaned $250 million to New York Times Company, the parent company of the New York Times. That same year, Slim purchased 15.9 million Class A shares of the company. Slim has regularly conducted business with Chinese companies with overt ties to the CCP. In 2017, Slim's Giant Motors joint ventures with China's JAC Motors and began manufacturing cars in Mexico to sell in the Latin American market. According to Forbes, the goal of selling to Latin America was to circumvent the Trump administration's trade policies aimed at protecting American jobs, a move that benefited the Beijing in the Chinese-American trade wars. According to Bloomberg Law, Slim's company, America Movil, is teaming up with CCP telecommunication giant Huawei Technologies to pitch a 5G pilot project to the Colombian government this year. Huawei is actively working to undermine American security interests by overturning legislation in the United States that bans the use of Huawei's 5G network. The Washington Post. In 2013, Amazon CEO and billionaire Jeff Bezos purchased the Washington Post for $250 million cash. In January 2016, Bezos laid out a new plan for the Post aimed at incorporating more technology. Bezos has direct ties to the Chinese business market, which is regulated by the CCP. The production of Amazon's most popular products, including the Amazon Echo and Kindle e-reader, take place almost exclusively in Chinese factories. According to Newsweek, Amazon's products are produced by Chinese laborers who work long hours with low pay and little safety training. Bezos has long tried to expand Amazon in the Chinese markets, saying Amazon is well positioned to serve China. Bezos also backed a treaty between the U.S. and China, allowed technology companies to increase business with China, and provided a framework for U.S. tech companies to invest more in the Chinese economy. After years of business in the Chinese market, Bezos' ties with China are now evident in the Washington Post advertisement section. Going down to CNN. CNN is owned and operated by Warner Media, which has significant financial and institutional ties to the CCP. In 2013 of June, Warner Media announced it had forged a partnership with the Chinese investment fund to the tune of $50 million. The funding would directly invest in the China Media Capital, a media company with oversight from the CCP, meaning it is subject to censorship and other demands to push Chinese propaganda. Warner Media considers China a partner in their economic and cinematic ventures. Increasing our global presence is one of Time Warner's strategic priorities, and China is one of the most attractive territories in which we operate, but it's complex. This alliance will give all our businesses a savvy and accomplished partner, said Warner Media Chairman and Chief Executive Jeff Bewkes. And I'm going to go down here. Last week, as of the date of this article, CNN published a story praising China's model of control. The Federalist's Kylie Zempel writes that CNN is, quote, parroting Chinese media's duplicitous claims that the country has sufficiently control of the virus, downplaying the CCP's role in spreading the crown illness to the rest of the world. MSNBC and NBC. Both companies are operated by NBC Universal, a company with extensive financial ties to the CCP. In November 2010, NBC signed an agreement with China's state-run media organization Xinhua, sorry if I butchered that as well, probably did, to establish a business cooperation in international broadcast news. Since the signing of the business deal, the U.S. State Department identified Xinhua, and 5 other Chinese state-run media organizations as foreign missions. They have been identified as direct CCP operations and do not function as independent news outlets. In 2015, NBC Universal agreed to license the Chinese tech company Baidu's, sorry I know I mispronounced that as well, I'm not fluent in Chinese, so forgive me, new video network platform IQIYI, which is listed on the NASDAQ and, thanks to NBC, advertises in Times Square in New York City. Finally, CMC Capital Partners, a Beijing investment group with financial and technological oversight from the CCP, acquired full ownership of NBC Universal's Oriental DreamWorks, according to The Hollywood Reporter. NBC Universal gains a 45% stake for a steep $3.8 billion. Then we go down to ABC. In November 2009, the Chinese government approved plans to create a Disney World theme park in Shanghai. The project cost approximately $3.6 trillion with financial help from several large Chinese state-owned enterprises. ESPN, another entity of ABC, was caught doing the bidding of the Chinese government in October 2019, when the NBA controversially refused to denounce the CCP for financial benefit. ESPN stood with the NBA to keep financial revenue on track for the 2019 fiscal year. ESPN bowed to the Chinese government for profit motives when the network's senior news director reportedly instructed staff to avoid discussing Chinese politics if they were asked about Chinese politics or Daryl Morey's pro-Hong Kong tweets. And I'm going to go down to now Bloomberg. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg and his company, Bloomberg LP, are heavily invested in China. Bloomberg LP sells terminals to their website through the Chinese market and helps finance Chinese companies by sending billions of dollars from U.S. investors to the Chinese bond market. Bloomberg LP supported 364 Chinese firms and directed approximately $150 billion to their bond offerings. Of these companies, 159 were controlled by the CCP. Correspondent Mike Forsyth focused on exposing Chinese President Xi Jinping's ties to the country's richest man, Wang Zhanlin. Sorry for that. When the story was ready for publication, founding editor-in-chief Matthew Winkler told Forsyth he was crushing the story to avoid angering the CCP. Wow. And that is the end of the article, folks. And I will have a description. I will have a link in the description for both articles down in the description below, so you can go and read all this. What are your thoughts? What are your comments on this? Please put them below. Be part of the conversation. Hope this story spread. And with that, I will bid you farewell, and I will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.